Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in to my first kind of real One Mitchell Management broadcast here. I hope you find some of the information here helpful. Today, I thought I'd dive into a little bit about the idea of how to streamline your product development. So, as an organization grows from, say, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 or 20 people, there are a lot of different roles that start to be kind of more developed or created, like product related, product marketing related, etc. And sometimes the strategies have to change as the company really starts to take off. So, sharing some insight today on how to recognize where the critical spots are that you can really make some improvements as your organization grows. So calling this presentation, it's a short presentation with about a dozen slides. We'll talk through it. You don't need to follow along in the text because there isn't very much. But I just wanted to talk through the idea of finding where the critical handoffs are in our organization. There are some that are just common sense, and then there are others that are a little more complicated as a business grows, and it's essential for you to really get a handle on those. So first of all, let's just talk about what we would call the software life cycle. I'm not going to teach about the software development life cycle or anything like that, but as you already know, there are existing cycles and frameworks for understanding how software is developed. Some of these are really straightforward. Many of them are very complex and have been developed over decades, really. So that, for example, you know that you need to not just collect requirements and build a product, but you need to test it, etc. So, and then maintain it. So that's one kind of whole set of processes that's operating kind of behind the scenes in most organizations. Engineering and a little bit of product management kind of takes care of all that under the covers and behind the scenes. But there's also a product life cycle, and one of the more complex ones you'll find on Wikipedia is the called product life cycle. And there are many others. These are just images from Google showing different product life cycle ideas. There are a lot of them, and there are a lot that have been developed over decades as well. They're not all software related. I mean, they're anything where you're producing something out of kind of raw resources and then sharing it out to the rest of the world. That's a really powerful concept. Just like software development has a life cycle, so does the product overall, including everything like retirement and maintenance and rejuvenation of projects. So that in itself is a whole another set of complex relationships going on in your organization as it grows. And we're not going to dive deep into both of those. But what I wanted you to do is to be able to identify the specific areas kind of maybe between those two life cycles or in as parts of those two life cycles where we can actually make some optimizations and improvements or set some processes in place to make it an easier process. Because really, when that software project gets launched, as we'll talk about in a second, it's a real challenge to necessarily to get to market in an efficient way without losing your sanity. So three quick steps here. Don't get distracted by the minute details of every department and project. Don't When you're trying to optimize the organization, don't drill down into some finite level of detail that's in one aspect or one corner of the company. We want to specifically, and this kind of goes to the second point here, recognize where the primary product and sales or marketing handoff timing requirements are. That's a critical piece because if you get that wrong, you have a failed launch. And then thirdly, optimize the handoff process to reduce the stress and increase the ability to plan and deliver. Now, I've been in scenarios where product releases go relatively smoothly. I've been in ones where they don't go smoothly, or maybe there was a special release and people's hair was on fire and people were scrambling just to get a blog post together to talk about it. And then others where there's no processes at all. So the full range of opportunity to mess up your product or do a great product launch is out there, but we can make it a smooth transition if you know where to look. So first, it's helpful to look at the company or your whole kind of product line in two buckets, the product bucket and the marketing and sales bucket. So the product side, they're collecting the requirements from the users, the customers, they understand the market dynamics, they're building a product for a specific purpose, and then they're kind of outfitting that product with the correct kind of bows on the package, the documentation is correct, there's training programs developed, etc. And then there's this idea of a handoff over to the marketing and sales side. They take the product, they share it outside the company, they advertise for it, they help develop the sales process and develop leads, and ultimately leads to a sale, a support, and hopefully a renewal. So these two buckets really are the kind of way to think about the company overall and the product offering without having to dive into those product lives and marketing life cycles. And then third, there's another component here where you are getting that feedback loop coming from the customer, and it's really coming from the sales side and the customer support side back into the product team to develop its next level of product requirements. So the key here for when you're actually developing and optimizing for these handoffs is to really avoid any kind of dependency on serendipity or depending upon one particular superstar within the company to deliver. We've seen this when you go from a startup with one or two key people kind of shepherding the release along, and then you're growing into a company of 50, 80 people, and you still look back at the original process that the original release team maybe did, and you can get really stuck because you're reliant upon processes that are in someone's head or that are even just on the fly. We don't want any hidden information. We don't want any special one person that's required to make this product a success. It's got to be a team effort, and it can't just be happenstance or ad hoc. So we talk process-driven handoffs. We need to look at what the main processes are. So at the beginning, I could say, like, if you look at this in some kind of a timeline fashion, where 0 is earlier than 2, or 0, 1 is earlier than 0, 2 here, you have the software development team working on the product release, building the product. They're kind of handing that off to the product management team in a way to validate that it's meeting the requirements as expected and is going to be a complete product. I talked about this in one of my other videos where I talked about understanding who the internal customer is, and there's some interplay going on here that's important to understand. But that software team hands that off to the product management team, and when that's all wrapped up and the product team's got this ready, we say that the product is complete. So product complete, check. Good work. What does that mean? Well, there's really no clear definition of what product completion looks like. It'll depend on your organization, but there are a lot of standard expectations about what this process means. Product completion means all aspects of the user's needs are addressed and are packaged up and are ready to be delivered. If they're not ready to be delivered, you don't have a product. If you don't have, for example, you don't have documentation, you're really not running a product. If you don't have all the bugs documented, you don't have a product ready to go. So product completion is that first stage, and oftentimes companies don't think of it in these multiple stages like this. They just think, oh, we're going to do a product launch, check, and they go. But product launch is more at this later stage. You've got product completion. You can hand it over if you have a product marketing person or organization, and they will help shuttle that product out to the external audience through the marketing and sales channels. That's what I call a product has been launched. Product launch cycle here is another really critical concept to get your head around, and while it sounds really similar to product completion, product launching is really targeting the end user in the market itself, and is really targeting and selling that product to the marketing and sales team so they can carry it further. So when the product launch happens, it's presentable to prospective customers, it's ready to be delivered, it's ready to be sold, it's ready for a PO to be issued, and it's ready, customer service is ready to service that product. So you see the difference there. Product completion does not mean that customer service is ready to answer the phone when they call, because there's a bunch of other variables in here that you need to understand at those two stages. So that's it for today's video. But I wanted to leave you with this idea that I'm developing these resources, and I'm going to be sharing these resources out soon. And the first two are really the two processes that I was just outlining. The product readiness is going to be, I'm going to explain it in more detail using a checklist of processes and identifying the kind of common items that are required for a release. Now, you already probably have one of these going on. If you don't, it's in your head, it's in someone else's head, maybe it's in a combined 3 or 4 people's heads. Well, we'll come up and show you using a dashboard or checklist utility. I'll share it with you for really making sure you've got all the dots on the I's and T's crossed. And then the product launch readiness checklist is really crucial for that marketing and sales side. So it includes a lot of different capabilities that need to be reviewed, including web assets, documentation, etc. And then later on, we'll get into campaigns and what kinds of sales enablement resources I would recommend for you. So these are the two products, number 1 and number 2, that are coming down the pipe here. So if you want to learn more about them, get signed up to my mailing list, follow on LinkedIn, and we will get that information out to you when it's available. Here are my contact information, and you can sign up through my website, which is just kind of getting off the ground, and then or sign up on LinkedIn to follow what we're doing. I just wanted to thank you again for showing up and watching the video. I'd love to hear your comments, other topics, maybe things that I mentioned that you'd like to learn more about, dig into deeper. Let me know what you need. I'm here as a resource to fill in between kind of those engineering teams, product marketing, and sales. And I'm available to give you advice wherever you need along that pipeline. But stay in touch, and we'll share some of these resources as they develop. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.